everyone. Welcome to the show. We're back after a little hiatus last week, and tonight Lon Strickler is my guest, and he is an author and head of Phantoms and Monsters Radio, as well as head of Phantoms and Monsters Radio. Let's welcome Lon. Hi, Lon.
Hey, Bernadette, how you doing?
Hi. How are you?
Hanging in there.
Oh, that's good. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate sticking around.
No problem.
That was a great show you had tonight, by the way.
Well, Sam he's a legend. I mean, he's a 44-year-old legend. So, yeah, he's a talented guy, and I was glad to have him on. And I'm going to try to utilize him more and more. So, yep. So, yeah, he does have a lot of interesting subjects. And, of course, the artwork goes along with that. And, of course, as you can see behind me, I'm starting a little gallery of Sam Sheeran artwork. So,
They are great pictures behind you. They really are. It makes a nice backdrop. So I'm gonna ask you the general. How did you get into this? No.
I didn't hear you. Kind of skipped out on me.
Oh, no, sorry. So I'm just gonna ask you the basic question. How did you get into the field of the paranormal, for those who don't know?
Oh. Well, I kind of fell into it. For those people who don't know my story, we'll kind of put it out there because it is an interesting story. I suppose most people like to hear about it. But anyway, I knew from the very beginning, or when I was old enough to realize things, that something was different with me. And my first real encounter happened when I was around 9 years old. Around that, I think it was in 1967, maybe. So, you guys do the math. I'm an old guy, so I've been around doing this for a while. Anyway, I used to spend a lot of time at Gettysburg Battlefield. And, of course, I took you and Tommy there last year, so you'll probably recognize the area I'm going to talk about. That area, that road that leads into Devil's Den, and before you go up, take a left up into Little Round Top and by the wheat field. I was on my bike, and all of a sudden, it's like a big TV screen opened up in front of me. And for about 30 seconds, I was in the battle. I was seeing soldiers, hearing gunfire, cannon fire, smelling gunpowder. All my senses were heightened. And it lasted about 30 seconds and just suddenly vanished. It was eye-opening. That's the first time anything like that had happened to me. Now, I had a few things happen here and there, and I knew something was going on with me, but I just didn't really know what it was. So anyway, so that's where it began. As time went on, I didn't live in a haunted house. I didn't live in an area, in a house that had a lot going. And there were a lot of things, and I talked about this with Sam tonight. I had things that were happening to me. I would see things that I just didn't really understand. And I think most people that are intuitive do experience things like that. But I never mentioned all this stuff to my parents. Very conservative upbringing. I was raised as a Lutheran in a very conservative town, South Central Pennsylvania. And, people just didn't talk about that, especially back then. And so after I grew up a bit, I was still in high school, my senior year in particular. I started doing paranormal investigations. And quite frankly, it was all word of mouth back then. There was no internet. We didn't have we didn't have cell phones or anything. So it was all word of mouth. And eventually people would contact me and ask me to take a look at things. take a look at their, where they lived at or businesses and stuff. And I did. My senior year in high school, I was pretty busy. I was going to a lot of places, but it was hard to talk to people about it because back then when you said, "Oh yeah, I'm a paranormal investigator," and they'd look at you like, a deer in a headlight. They didn't know what the hell you were talking about. So, that's what I did. And when I graduated, I did go to college for a semester, half a semester, and I left there, had to start a family, and I moved down to Maryland, and I was living in Sykesville, Maryland, and then I went to work. I was married for 5 years, my first wife, then I got a divorce. I had custody of my daughter, and that year of the separation, before the divorce, I had an encounter with a Bigfoot outside of Sykesville. People call it the Sykesville Monster. That there was a lot of stuff that had happened in that area, but I happened to be fishing one day on the south branch of Patapsco River, which is about a mile downstream from Sykesville, Maryland, and I had an encounter. And if you want to go into it, we'll go into it further. But after that, several years later, in 1988, I had also had a winged humanoid encounter here in Pennsylvania at Camp Conewago, which is actually very close to me now. Where I live in Conewago Township outside of Hanover, and it's it's an old Boy Scout camp. But I was there as a favor to someone. I was with two other gentlemen who were scoutmasters, and they had asked me to come in and do the investigation. And we had this encounter with this red-eyed winged being, very similar to what's been going on in Chicago. Now, of course, I knew about the Mothman and all that, but after I had the Bigfoot encounter, I was very much into the cryptids, and 40 some years later, that's what I do. So that has all culminated into the blog and what I do now.
Let me make sure. Okay. Do you think that you were kind of predestined for this?
I think so. I think I've been asked that. I have thought about that. I think there's a possibility that may have happened. I wasn't convinced of it until all this stuff started happening in Chicago. I think my initial encounter was kind of a precursor to what I was going to end up investigating in Chicago. And what's interesting about the Chicago sightings is that myself and our team have been involved with that exclusively for the most part, because a lot of other teams just have not really picked up on it from early on. And we've been looking at this since 2011. So I don't know, maybe it has been predestined, but it's bizarre. It's very bizarre how it kind of culminated into what we're doing now. And it's been an amazing investigation for all these years. We're currently at 100.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. The video kind of went choppy, and I thought you were done speaking. Go ahead. No, continue.
Oh, okay. No, and I think, we kind of got, I put that, when that started, I had what we called the Chicago Phantom Task Force, the Chicago Mothman Task Force. I had some well-known people on there. We had a Rosemary Ellen Guy that was part of my team. I kind of bounced a lot of this stuff off with her, and she actually did the first presentation of 2017 at the Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant. And she kind of put it out there for us, and it's kind of evolved to this point. So 2 books of mine and 1 book Tobias's later, this is where we're at. We've currently at about 158 sightings that we believe are verifiable, and it's continuing. So it goes on and on, but it's kind of the investigation that just keeps on giving.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I The reason I asked that is because I've had similar to you as well. Like my experiences started in childhood and led all the way up to now, and it just you have to wonder if it's not something that's predestined in somebody. That's why I asked if you thought that. So
No, I
now getting
think that's
back
a
on track,
possibility.
you had this week. Yeah, I really do. It makes you wonder. So this week you put out a post about a Bigfoot being decapitated and hit by, I believe, a trucker. Do you want to
That was kind of a strange story. It was I saw it I saw it posted at let's see. I saw it posted over at Steve Isdall's website, which is the factsofhowtohunt.com. So I did the transcription, and I looked into it pretty much further. But actually, what happened was this was it was a German immigrant who happened to be in Ontario, Canada, working on a visa during the Christmas holidays of 2018, and he later went on to a podcast, the Surreality podcast, and I think it's changed its name since then. But he talked about it. What happened was he was on Ontario Route 502 northbound from Fort Frances to Dryden. It was an evening. The date was December 19, 2018. It was about 11:40 p.m. And he said he suddenly saw a semi with its hazard lights on the side of the road. And he didn't know what was happening, but he could tell the front when he looked back. He saw the front was damaged on the truck, so he stopped. He pulled over and stopped, and he got out and he knocked on the door of the cab of the truck and tried to contact whoever this was, and he wasn't getting an answer. Well, he eventually got in there. I don't know if the guy opened it up or it was open, but anyway, he went in. And he said this driver was cowered in the bed of the truck, and he was saying he was pale as a ghost. And he said he didn't know what happened, but so this gentleman, this witness, said, "Well, I'm going to call the police. I'm going to call the provincial police." And when he got out of the cab, he looked up the road, and there was blood everywhere. I mean, it was like a ton of blood. And the first thing he thought was, this guy hit a bear. So he followed the blood trail, and I don't know how far back he went, but when he came upon this huge, massive fur, dark fur, and the first thing he thought was, this is a humongous bear. I don't know what this was, but as he got closer to it, he could tell it was a Bigfoot, and that the head was nearly decapitated from this thing, thus all the blood. So he called provincial police, and they came eventually. And he said the strange thing about it was when he went up to the police officers and told him what he saw, they acted like, they seemed so nonchalant about it. And which is crazy. And like they've seen something like this before. So they wanted to question him further as to what happened. So what they did, they took him back to the station. They put him in the interrogation room, and he had to wait there for a bit. And he didn't know what to expect. So as he was there, and later on, he said that a female officer, he said a man in a suit came into the room. He said he looked really odd, a bit like an ill person, because he had the grayish colored skin, bald head, and sort of sunken cheeks. Now, he said he had like a Quebec accent and spoke very gently and calmly without any expression at all. And he had to recall everything that he experienced and all his personal information, his reason for being in Canada. And they fingerprinted him and took a DNA sample of saliva. He said he felt like he was being interrogated like a criminal. And then after he had told his story, they made him sign a non-disclosure agreement. And he said the agreement was bizarre because it didn't have any type of coat of arms or anything from Ontario or anything. It was just like a piece of paper with all this stuff on there. And he said when he signed it, this guy told him that you did not see anything. He told him that, he was going to have to leave Canada within a week by the end of the year. And that, he would not be allowed to come back into Canada. He can't even get back into the United States. So he's been cut off of North America altogether. So, of course, when I read this, the first thing I thought was, this is very similar to what we see with Men in Black encounters. Very similar. So, I mean, the question is, why is this going on? Things like this seem to happen in Canada. I don't know what it is. I've talked to Dave Scott at Spaced Out Radio about this. And, I don't understand why this does seem to happen a lot in Canada.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Right. It makes you wonder, is that actually like a binding document though he signed if there was no heading or anything on it? I mean, was just a scare tactic?
Oh, sure, it was a scare tactic. But the thing is, he has tried to get back into North America, into Canada. He's blacklisted. He's blacklisted for the United States. So, of course, U.S. immigration is part of this as well. So the thing you got to think about is, well, maybe there's a cooperation thing there, and he's been blocked out of coming into North America now for over 3 years. So, according to his story. Now, when you read something like this, you start to wonder, did this actually happen? And is there any information about this? And I did look at it, and I did listen to the guy on the video. I think he's very sincere about it. And people, things like this do happen. I mean, there's, the whole Bigfoot phenomenon seems to raise the stakes for whatever reason. It happens here in the United States as well. My encounter, entailed local and federal investigators back then. That was back in 81. So I know it does happen. And I have been questioned about a lot of different things over the years as well. So I'm kind of on the radar also. So yeah, it's a bizarre story, but I believe it really did happen to him.
Yeah. Do you think it happens more with Bigfoot than any other cryptid, that this, that people get, say, a visit from Men in Black, or, like what happened to you or the guy in Canada? Or is it just equal all around?
I think as far as cryptids go, it probably happens more so with Bigfoot. And the reason I say that is there's many more Bigfoot reports as opposed to other cryptids like Mothman or Dogman or all that. But I think there's an ulterior motive there somewhere. I think the government, in particular the United States, has got some type of involvement with Bigfoot for whatever reason. Are they militarizing Bigfoot? Are they using it for some other type of means? I don't know. But there does seem to be something there. And, this is something I've been looking into, oh my God, for over 40 years now. And I still don't really have an answer. Got a lot of conjecture, a lot of stories, a lot of eyewitness reports of different things. But there does seem to be something to this.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question for you from Vincent. Didn't the authorities arrive unusually fast after the sighting of the Sykesville Monster?
Well, in my case, they did. After I had reported to the Sykesville police, I drove back to the location. I was asked to go back there and wait for an officer to get there. And it was only like a 3-minute drive from where I got on the phone with them. And when I got there, there was a Maryland State police officer already there with a wooden barrier across the road. And when I did go up to him, he told me, he said, "You got to leave." And I did. And I told him I was the one who made the report. He said, "I didn't care." He didn't care. "Just get out of here." So I did. I went back home. But then when I did come back an hour later, it was like a circus there. I mean, there were people with dogs going through the woods and all around the area. There was a large white tent set up on the north bank of the Patapsco River there. I heard helicopters. I saw the black it wasn't SUVs back then. The old Wagoneers were what they used to drive back then. And there were 2 of those there. There were authorities from all the jurisdictions, Howard County, Baltimore County on the other side, and Sykesville Police, Carroll County Sheriff. I mean, all of them are there. So, yeah. And why that happened. And, I did find out later, because I did look into it pretty closely. There had been a sighting downstream about 3 hours prior to mine that a woman had seen a Bigfoot in Marysville. And she made a call to the police, and for whatever reason, they had been tracking this thing. Now, for those people who are familiar or aren't familiar with the Baltimore, Washington area, there's a lot of buildings, a lot of facilities that are unmarked, where people don't really know what the hell's going on there. Now, did this thing escape from somewhere? Did it get out into the open and they were hunting it down? I don't know. It may very well be. I have some evidence to point that direction, but a lot of it's conjecture at this point, and I don't know if I'll ever find out. But there had been sightings in Sykesville about 7 or 8 years prior to that, which they called the Sykesville Monster. That area of Carroll County and Baltimore County it's mostly Carroll County, have had sightings around the Liberty Reservoir and in the Patapsco River Valley of Bigfoot. There have been several Class A sightings reported to BFRO. And these folks that lived in Sykesville, I was lucky enough to find one of their relatives who I actually worked with. And he introduced me to a lot of the previous witnesses, and I found a few other ones as well. So I was on getting firsthand information as to what people were experiencing, and this at the time, this was around the time of the Agnes flood back in '72, beginning of '73, and this Bigfoot, or this Sykesville Monster, what they called him, was breaking into homes, breaking into garages and such. One of the Sykesville police officers had a personal encounter with this thing. In fact, what happened was he had heard noise in the garage, and he was standing by the door, and this thing literally broke the door down of the garage from the inside out, knocked the policeman to the ground, and took off. I talked to one person who had this being get into their kitchen, and several people down on the river used to keep chickens in pens and stuff, and they had pets in pens, and it was breaking into those. Mm-hmm. So there was definitely something going on. Now, was the being I encountered part of that? I don't know. It very well could have been, but it's interesting. It's very interesting and very close to what I got the composite that Vincent has up there now. I got all their descriptions, put it all together, and I later sent it to a forensic artist down in Florida who did that sketch for me. And that's what I saw. I mean, when I did see this thing, it was like 40 foot away from me, very close. Wow. We were eye to eye. And this thing was about 8 foot in height, dark brown hair, dark skin. But the face looked more Neanderthal, more human-like than opposed to an ape. And, if I'd have had a gun or something with me, I don't think I could have shot it because it looked more human to me than it did an ape. So I didn't know what I was dealing with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Vincent wants to know, were you scared?
I was probably shocked. I was probably more shocked than I was scared. I had heard of Bigfoot. I had heard about the Boggy Creek incident that had been reported around that period of time. That was out. They had the movie out, and they had the whole story of Boggy Creek. And I knew of Bigfoot. I had seen the Patterson Gimlin film. I had seen the Freeman film and other things. And I knew people had reported these things, but I had no idea I was ever going to run across it. But I do believe that's what I did encounter. And you look at the picture, this is probably what it was. And but no, that rendering there is very, very close to what I encountered.
I could understand the shock seeing something like that, because I've never seen one, but I think I would be just as shocked. I mean, that's amazing. Vincent also wants to know, do you think there's a breeding population of Bigfoot in that area? Do you think that's why they all all the authorities converge on it? Like somehow they were trying to maybe track a population that was there, and one of them just happened to show himself?
I don't know. It could be a breeding population. There have been so many sightings that it's a good possibility there is a breeding population. But the fact that the feds got involved with this, I think was something to do with them. Maybe something escaped from a facility that they had, or something else. I don't know what happened, but and I've never really gotten enough information to figure out what did happen. But like I said before, there've been a lot of reports. So now that area now is pretty well, it's kind of built up. They put a lot of subdivisions in this area over years, but I do occasionally get another sighting report, a close encounter actually. So it still occurs.
Oh wow. So how long do you think they live? How long do you think a Bigfoot lives in general?
I think their lifespan is pretty similar to ours. Now, of course, they're living out in the elements. I think in general that would probably be detrimental to their lifespan. But I do believe that, and I've been asked this before, I think they probably live between 50 to 70 years on the average.
See, I was wondering about that because I didn't know if people thought they lived hundreds of years, things like that. Because
no, I don't think they live that long. I think their DNA and makeup is very close to ours, and that's why I think, even though they live in the elements, that their lifespans are very similar to ours.
Mhm. So Thomas Carroll asked, "Do you ever have any sightings up near Camp David?"
There have been sightings up there, up the Catoctin Mountains. There have been a few sightings up there. Now that whole area of the Catoctin is pretty well known for a lot of strange things. Anyway, I used to do a lot of fishing up there, a lot of fly fishing, and I know the area pretty well. Of course, I can't get into Camp David, but people who know the area know the access to Camp David is right off the main road up going up the hill. So, but yeah, there have been Bigfoot sightings up there.
Oh wow. You wonder what happens to them if they get near Camp David itself. I mean, like if they're ever spotted within, I guess, the perimeter that's protected.
Yeah, I mean that perimeter is wide
So
too.
let's see. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. No, if you had anything else to add to that.
No, that's it. I mean, it is a wide perimeter. I had been on the edge of the perimeter before. I don't know what it's like now, but I know the perimeter extended almost out onto the main road there, which is Cunningham Falls Road, I think. So the actual facility or the home and the whole complex is about a mile off the main road, so it's at least a mile deep.
Oh wow. So Vincent also asked, "Do you think seeing Bigfoot, winged humanoid, is related to your abduction?"
Probably not, though I can't prove that. I think the abduction scenario with me was a result of my work with David Eckhart. David warned me that they may actually I might have encounters with them after I started working with him. Now, it took a while. I was with David for about 6 or 7 years before I had my first encounter. And my encounters were at home. It was during the year that my wife was sick with cancer. And I had 2 encounters at home, and each time it was 3 tall alien grays. Very tall, and I'm talking about 7 to 8 foot in height. I had the encounters in the living room at night. And then I had one encounter where I believe I was literally taken. And I was taken to a location. I don't know if it was on a craft or somewhere else. I don't know what it was at, but all I know was when I was taken, I was taken to a location where they were showing me historical data and actually showing things that had happened in history, in particular, they showed me a large circular craft that landed, and they showed me the location in what is now the Nile Delta, out into the Mediterranean. And when I saw that, the first thing what I did, I asked them. I said, "Was this Atlantis?" And they never did answer me. But they did show me where these beings that were on this craft intermingled with the civilizations around them, and I'm talking about the Greeks, the Sumerians, in Mesopotamia around the Fertile Crescent, and especially down into Egypt. And I think that I do think that there has been some intervention with the Egyptians with the early Egyptians over the years, during several of the dynasties, in particular the 18th dynasty. And some of the things they did show me did indicate that. So I don't know. I mean, all I can do is just tell you or tell whoever what I did encounter. But yeah, they kind of were trying to show me what their interpretation of history, and that they were involved with the with the advancement of several our civilizations or Western civilizations, and in particular the Egyptian.
I believe that. I truly do. So, and I hate to butcher anyone's name, but I'm probably going to butcher her name. Maury Gaddy asked, Lon, have you ever had any strange happenings at your home after your different encounters?
Well, other than this alien showing up, I used to get a lot of blue orb activity. I did notice a lot of blue orb activity in my apartment, and I was living down in Randallstown, Maryland at the time. And my wife had seen that as well, so we were seeing a lot of strange things there. But other than that, I really haven't had much happen at home. And even now, I live, you know where I live. I live right beside a large cemetery.
Yeah.
And outside into McJerrystown, Pennsylvania, and
Yeah.
I very rarely sense anything here. So I haven't had much activity here at all, if any.
Well, that's good. You're lucky.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I'm jealous. You know how my house is. I'm very jealous.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So what about So what about also before the show we were also talking about the Andrew Dawson case because you posted about that as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell everyone about that?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. What happened was this guy by the name of Andrew Dawson reported that he saw some type of either giant or large Bigfoot on one of the Whistler Mountain ridges in British Columbia. It's called Whistler's Peak, and it was video of it. He did report it. Then he started reporting that he was being followed and told not to disclose any of this. Then, several months after that happened, this guy turns up dead. Now, was he trying to be silenced? I don't know. I've talked to several people who knew of this guy that said that he died under very mysterious circumstances, and that he was told he actually, before he passed, he was actually trying to say that this was that he made this up and that this did not happen, but he was still being harassed. And like you said to me tonight, his girlfriend is trying to say now that this was a hoax, but there's still a lot of question about it. So we really don't know what happened here. Now I did post something back in October where it did have his obituary, and I did verify that the guy did pass. It's the same guy that had the encounter. So is this something? Is this something like before with the guy who saw the decapitated Bigfoot? Is this something where the powers that be are trying to hush this up? I don't know. It very well could be. But this stuff does happen. And, I've got a lot of examples over the years of weird stuff like this happening, especially involving Bigfoot. I don't know what it is. I don't know if there's something about Bigfoot that they want to keep quiet or whatever. I mean, it's an enigma to me, but it did happen.
Mm-hmm. And when you posted that, I'm very nosy, so I went to TikTok and I found his account and I watched his videos, and he posted the giant video when he found it. It's crazy. It really is. I mean, that's up there. And then the other videos, when he denies it himself, like he literally comes on and he's like, it was a hoax. You're not going to hear from me. He looks off camera when he's saying, and you could tell he's scared. So then, like, I went back and I found his girlfriend's account, and she, she came on. She was basically saying, leave me alone. He hoaxed it. He pulled the wool over your eyes, and then she went, it was real, but it wasn't real. Those were her exact words. So then something was real, but something was, and it's just like you could tell she was afraid. She just wanted left alone. So there's something there. There's, whether she's being threatened, and they have a child. So I could understand that as a mother, she would want, to protect her child with him. But yeah, that whole thing is just, it's crazy. It really is.
I think she's being pressured to keep quiet like he was. And they're kind of coaching her to say certain things to try to get people off of it, because it has created quite a stir. I know several people in British Columbia who know all about this, and it's causing people to question what really happened out there.
Yeah, or what's on that mountaintop. I mean,
well, exactly.
I even looked at it and I'm like, what the heck is? Yeah, he's in a car. He's pretty far away. What the heck is this giant thing walking up on the mountain? It's it's not a person, obviously. So it's and I feel bad for her. I truly do. I feel bad for her. My heart goes out to her. So I have a question before we move on from Marla. Do you believe in the Bigfoot alien connection?
Yeah. There have been a few examples of it historically, but of course, I guess this is something that is a theory of Stan Gordon of an incident that happened up on the Chestnut Ridge in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, and not far from you, and where there were sightings of UFOs that apparently landed in the woods near a certain location. And not long after that, there were several Bigfoot creatures with shining eyes showing up walking along the fence line. That's not the only time it happened. In fact, it had happened in Pennsylvania before, up near Presque Island, off just outside of Erie, which extends out into Lake Erie, where there was an encounter with a UFO and then a Bigfoot at the same time. Yeah, I do believe it happens. And, I've had people tell me over the years that of similar type of sightings that may or may not have been related to the UFO, but it's quite a coincidence. So, yeah, I think there is a connection there somehow.
Now, do Bigfoot, do they naturally have like the shining eyes like you just said, or the glowing eyes, or was it just these ones that came out of the craft you've ever heard of?
Well, that particular sighting on Chestnut Ridge, okay. Yeah, and that particular sighting on Chestnut Ridge, they seem to have extraordinarily bright eyes. Now, I have had people or witnesses talk about, the eye shine of Bigfoot on many occasions, but this particular eye shine seemed somewhat supernatural. It was more projecting light as opposed to reflecting light. Just like we have had with the Mothman phenomena, like a projection of light. So I think, were these alien beings, or, is Bigfoot related to aliens somehow because of that? It very well could be. I was involved with a habituation in northern Nova Scotia along the Bay of Fundy back in about 6 or 7 years ago, where a farmer in Nova Scotia was documenting Bigfoot activity on his farm, and he used to encounter a lot of UFO activity, and he believed that there was something to it. He had actually seen one of these creatures leave a circular craft at one point. So I don't know if it really is that, but there have been some encounters where people have talked about that.
See, I was going to ask you if you thought maybe they were cloaked in a way, or they were something appearing as Bigfoot that weren't really Bigfoot with that kind of eye shine.
It could
Because
be.
I wasn't
I
sure if
mean, it
that
could
type of
be.
glowing eyes was common. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be an imitation, maybe, but I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the descriptions that we have received or that have historically been reported is very similar to a Bigfoot, or what people describe as a
Mhm.
Bigfoot. So I don't know if there's an alien connection there or not, but in those instances, it seems like there very well may be.
Yeah. So this is gonna be a good question, I think. What is the case that most stands out to you? Like, what is, the case
Well,
that's
Bigfoot
always stuck with you
or
over the
something
years?
else. I mean,
Any always been like your case
oh
that
yeah,
you
well,
always think
this
of?
whole Chicago Mothman winged humanoid thing is. I mean, this is the case that keeps on giving. I mean, we've been looking at this now since 2011, and of course, it kind of died off for a while, but then in 2017, it really started picking up, and
Hmm.
I got real deep into it, and then Emmanuel was with me from the very beginning with it, Emmanuel Navarrete, and of course,
Hmm.
Tobias Whalen, who lives in Wisconsin, just over the border, it was was looking into it as well. So we kind of pulled our resources together and started doing the investigation as a trio. And we had a few people with us on the way. I told you about Rosemary Ellen Godley was part of that. But yeah, like I said, it's the case that
Hmm.
keeps on giving. And we have had some really bizarre reports over the years. And I think there's an alien connection there somehow.
Hmm.
Uh, in recent years, most of the
Yeah.
reports, most of the best reports were coming out of O'Hare International. O'Hare, I don't know what it is about that airport. There's a lot
Hmm.
of weird things that happen at airports, but O'Hare just seems to have that certain aura about it where a lot of weird things do happen. And yeah, but that's the case. I
Hmm.
mean, this is when you think about it, very rarely do you get cryptid cases in a metropolitan area, and to the degree it has been reported, it's it's remarkable. I mean, it's this just does not happen. Now, of course, it has spread out into other areas,
Right.
into other locations, west, south, and north of Chicago. It's going up as far north as Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and as far south as almost near Indianapolis, Indiana, and into central Illinois. So
Hmm.
it's kind of spread out. We've had some sightings also into Michigan and some sightings out over the Lake Michigan. So yeah, it's
Oh, wow.
there's a lot
Hmm.
involved with this. I think we do think that there is an interdimensional aspect to these things, uh,
Hmm.
but we really
Is
don't know.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Now, is Denver just as bad as O'Hare in terms of supernatural anything? Because I've heard things about Denver Airport. I believe it's Denver Airport.
Yeah, Denver Airport is just bizarre. Um, the people who built that put a lot of different things into that airport that just have the real conspiratorial aspect to it. I know the Masons had some input on that. Some of the artwork is just
Hmm.
really bizarre. They've got some large murals there that are just really out there.
Yeah.
Uh, I have had people report reptilian type activity in the bowels of that airport. I've had people who have had some weird encounters, like missing time in the airport. So we do occasionally get we do occasionally get a report out of there. So, but
Hmm.
that's about the extent of what people experience there. But it's bizarre. It's really weird.
Yeah. Do you think maybe like airports like that and O'Hare, they're hubs for something like incoming, say like the winged humanoids for O'Hare or something else for Denver?
I just think it's the actual location. I think something was there before they built the airport. Of course, O'Hare's got a cemetery that's still there. There was another one there, but that was moved. Has that got something to do with it? Very well could be. But
That they did.
it just seems to be a hot area.
Yeah.
There is ley line activity in that area. Is that a contributing factor? Very well could be. As far as and there are some of the murals from Denver. It's really bizarre. I've had people tell me that they have stood there and looked at those murals and have just lost time. And it's a weird. And I think the location is weird anyway. That airport is not that old. It's about 20 years old. But when they built this airport, the other airport was, I don't know why all of a sudden they had to build it. Maybe it was space. But it kind of went up quickly without much opposition. And they put a lot of weird things into it.
Yeah. And I know for O'Hare, that something like they didn't move it. They basically, they built the airport almost around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's weird, because you would think that they would, exhume the bodies and move them to somewhere else so they could, because who wants a cemetery right there at the airport? That's just weird to me. That really is.
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of activity. Yeah, we had a lot of activity around that cemetery, and we've had other humanoid sightings. We've had the winged humanoid sightings, and a lot of weird stuff that's happened there. It's actually it's part of a large cargo area that surrounds it. So a lot of these people who work in those cargo areas have had these encounters or have had these sightings.
Mm-hmm. It's just odd. It really is. So what is the case that has made you almost want to give all this up, to hang it up and just walk away? Have you had a case like that?
Yeah, I did have one case like that. It was an abduction case where the individual, after I had talked to her, I knew something was going on. I knew something was wrong, but then I did find out later that she was possibly abducted, and she has never returned. And that was almost a decade ago, and there's still no indication that she has come back. I have checked with the state police. It happened in Washington State, and she just vanished off the face of the earth. Her car was left, her personal effects were left, and they had some possible alien activity, UFO activity at the time. And it was ramping up. And then one night, her mother found her missing. She was nowhere to be found. And, I was supposed to talk to her the next day. And I never got a phone call. Mm-hmm. And her mother called me about 5 days later, and she told me that she was missing and that they're looking for her. And, but the police at the time thought she might have just took off with a boyfriend or something, that was out of character with her. And she has not been seen since. And I felt bad about it because I had talked to her about 3 hours that evening, and it kind of left a hole in me. I almost hung up everything. I almost gave up on all of it because it did affect me until I realized that, this wasn't my fault. I mean, I could have warned her, but what would me warning her do? So, I kind of got over it, but it's probably affected me as much, if not more than any other case I've been involved with. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you think they wanted with her? Like, why do you think they picked her, in your opinion?
Why do they pick anybody? That's the big question.
That's true.
I mean, why did they take me? Yeah. Why did they take a lot of other people? Why did they take David? Their motives are unknown. Is there something to do with generations, DNA? A lot of times families experience a lot of this through generations. I think there's something to that. I personally believe that that these beings believe that humans have something that they don't have and that they want, and that's to the belief of us having a soul, having a life force that extends beyond life. Mm-hmm. That, you know, when they die, and that when humans die, mm-hmm. there seems to be a life force, a spirit, if you may, that extends beyond mortal life. And I think that may be an explanation as to why there are abductions, because I think they're looking for that.
Mm-hmm. That's as good an explanation as any, because it fascinates me, like, what makes somebody so special to take them, as opposed to maybe like if you get taken, why not your wife, or, you know, why not your son, or, you know, just it makes you wonder what is different about you than like someone else in your family who doesn't get taken, you know. Mm-hmm. Vincent asked, does the paranormal take a toll on you? Would you warn people about getting into the field? That's a really good question.
I think it has taken a toll on me. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink. I think it has taken a toll on me physically and maybe a bit mentally. But I have had psychic attacks. Mm-hmm. I had been injured during remote views and cases. So that's the physical side of it. You know, mm-hmm. when I started working with people, a lot of the people I was working with people that got into the paranormal, calling themselves paranormal investigators, and then getting themselves in trouble and picking up attachments. And then they'd call us wanting to know what the hell happened. Why are they experiencing this stuff? And I mean, the simple answer is they didn't protect themselves, and they left themselves wide open for an attachment. And that's what happens a lot of times. So, you know, I believe that anybody that gets involved with the paranormal needs to learn how to protect themselves, and it's just not fun and games. This is a very serious thing. There are forces out there that people just can't control, and they need to learn how to protect themselves. And if they don't, they're going to get in trouble themselves, and it happens a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And you know, people see this stuff on TV and they think, oh, it's just a joke, until it's not a joke, until bad things start to happen to them, you know. And I've had people say to me, well, I wish I could see what you see. No, you don't. Like, when people say that, I cringe. Yeah. You know, no, you don't, or you don't want to hear what I hear. Things, and it does. It makes me cringe as somebody who can see things, that has seen things. Like, you don't want to see this stuff. Like, you don't want to be, you know, like 7, 8 years old with a hat man, which I didn't know at the time, like leaning over your bed. Like, you don't want like a strange man at that age leaning over your bed, and then just, you know, it was you don't want that. But oh, you have the people who do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Mortal Clown asks, how does the paranormal work to make your life better?
Yeah, that sounds like a question coming from her. I know her personally.
Oh, dear.
I don't know. She's made it more nice interesting.
From what I found her.
Yeah, it's made it more mm-hmm. interesting. I don't know if it's made it better. It has made it more interesting. I've probably, that's a tough question. I can't really say it's made it better, but it has made it more interesting. And I've learned a lot. I mean, you know, if you've been involved with this the way I have been, you do learn. And it has led to certain things down the road. I don't know if notoriety is a good thing at some point. But, you know, one thing that I do know, it has allowed me to go out there and to express myself and express my experiences and to give my thoughts as to what's been going on. And yeah, and I've had the opportunity to help people as well. So and she knows I've helped a lot of people, and her and I have talked about
Yeah.
this before as well. So yeah,
Yes.
you know, when
Yeah.
you do that, when you get involved with a case, especially a case with kids, and you can help them and to alleviate their pain and suffering, uh, that is worth it. It really is. I mean, that's a feeling that it's hard to express. And I've been lucky enough to experience that. So if you know if that has changed my life, then yeah, that's a good part about it.
Yeah. And Vincent's chat, he said, I think I could speak for almost everyone. I think you've helped at least each one of us in the chat, like myself included. I mean, you're very, very appreciative of the help. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate that.
What is, before I ask David Jones' question, if you could go back, what is one thing that you, oh no, it's the truth, Lon, trust me. If you could go back, what is one thing you would change about being an investigator? Knowing what you know now.
I'd have probably taken a better approach early on. It was like, you know, I had to go through the hard knocks of the whole thing early on. I have, I started doing this back in the late 70s, and there have been cases I've been involved with or investigations I've been involved with where I did some really stupid things. And I know better now. I did know better back then, but I still did it. But that's being young. So when you're young, you're stupid. So you do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that I would not have done now. But you live and learn, and it's just like anything else. I mean, the experience, that's part of doing this, and that's why I try to instill and try to help people with what they encounter, and people who do want to do this, to kind of give them an idea of what they may be getting into.
David Jones wants to know, will you be spending the night at David Eckhart's house?
I've known David for a long time, over a decade. I've never been there. He has asked me to come there. I'm thinking about it more and more. I'd say there is a possibility that I'll go down there eventually. I will be prepared. I'll tell you, when my wife was still alive, I was working with David. I was working with a lot of people, but particularly with David. She did not want me going down there because she knew what was going on. There was one time where I was seriously thinking about going down there, but I promised her I wouldn't go down there. And in fact, when I wrote the book Alien Disclosure, she didn't want me to write that. That book came out and I wrote that book after she passed. So yeah, it may come to a point where I will go see David in person, and well, maybe something will happen. Maybe I'll have a personal experience. I'll be honest with you. I think if I do go down to David's, it's going to be interesting, and I think things will open up. And I know Mortal Clown does not want me to go. She has warned me about going down there. She thinks David's kind of over his head. I don't know. I'm still debating it, but I very well may go.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think they might be waiting for you if you get down there. So maybe take Vincent with you. This way you're safe.
Yeah, I'll put him in front and he'll take the flak. Yeah.
Vincent has. There you go. Just be like, here, take Vincent there. He'll be the decoy.
He'll be the decoy. Yeah.
Yeah. Vincent asked, have you ever had any experiences with extraterrestrials since your first encounter?
Possibly I had one. About a year and a half ago, I had something happen. I don't know what it was. I think I may very well have been abducted, but I cannot recall it. I am not a fan of hypnotic regression. I've seen too many bad experiences because I have witnessed several. And I don't think I want to put myself through that. So if I do recall it later on down the road, then fine. But until then, I just think I'm going to let it go.
You don't want to be regressed, or I think that's what it's called, regressed, to find
Yeah,
out
regression.
if you know what went on.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it. Like I said, I know I know of several people that do these regressions. I'm not saying they're not. I'm not saying that they're not professional, but different people react to these things in different ways, and it's not all. It's not all. Good. I mean, I've seen some bad reactions.
Yeah, and I don't think I would want to do that either. I think that would be a little scary. So in your book, because I did get a chance off Kindle Unlimited to read your book, Alien Disclosure. You had a story in there about a gentleman, I believe he was in the military and he had seen something. He came back and he had told his wife that they were going to take him. And in the end, he basically, I don't know how YouTube is, so I'm going to say it this way, he unalived himself. And he had left her a note basically saying that they had come the day before to tell him that he was going with them. Do you want to tell everyone that story a little bit?
I mean, I'll be general. I mean, he was stationed at Fort Campbell down in Kentucky. And he, something had happened to him. Now, I don't know exactly what, but he told his wife eventually that, and I don't know if they contacted him. He told her he'd be leaving. He didn't go into any details, but she knew she knew pretty well what may happen, and it got to the point where he just offed himself. Yeah, I think he was fearful of what would happen with his family. So, if he thought he was going to be abducted, and how can his wife explain that to the military? Or I think he did that to be able for her to claim his pension, the pension he had coming to her. So I think he was fearful for his family's safety and life, and I think that's why he committed suicide.
See, I was going to ask you, if you had a theory about why they were going to take him or any of that.
He had experienced something.
It was just, he seemed so afraid that they were.
Yeah, he was fearful. It was something that had happened on the base previous to that, and he was very general about it. And I think he may have had an experience while earlier on, possibly during combat at some point. There's a lot of these veterans, combat veterans, who have had some bizarre experiences, and a lot of times they just can't handle it. I've heard all kinds of stories coming out of Vietnam. I've heard a lot of stories coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan. Even a few in Korea. So, I think conflict attracts these outside beings, these otherworldly beings. And I think at some point they try to get involved somehow, but I think when they do that, it affects those that are doing the actual fighting. And I think that's what happened to
Yeah.
him. And I think, but it does happen, and I've written a lot of stuff about it.
Aren't there you? Yeah. Aren't there UFOs being seen over Ukraine? Is it Ukraine or it's being seen like they're seeing them now as the war is going on?
Yeah, there have been
Yeah.
some
So you have
sightings
to
over
wonder, like, if
Ukraine.
they're trying to get him, like you said, they're trying to. Yeah.
Oh, I
So you have
think
to wonder if they're trying to get involved, like you said.
I think all conflict on Earth has had some involvement with the other worldly ones, to some degree. We talk about World War II and the Foo Fighters and all that happened over Europe. There was something out there. I've heard of UFO sightings as far back as the Revolutionary War that, they saw something. They saw apparitions. They saw beings that they interpreted as just ghosts. They didn't know anything about alien beings or anything with I think it has happened throughout history. During the Civil War as well. These soldiers, I used to collect a lot of soldier letters that they sent back home, and occasionally something would come up to where they saw an orb or something that they described as an orb, or they thought they saw a ghost of someone they recognized or a ghost of someone they didn't recognize. There has been Bigfoot activity reported by Civil War soldiers on both sides. So paranormal just goes hand in
Oh
hand with,
wow.
it just goes hand in hand with conflict. So it has happened.
I wonder if they're trying to get involved to stop it or to just be witness to it, or what's your theory on it?
Uh, I think since ever since the use of nuclear weapons during the end of World War II, I think they've come more involved with it, that they don't want to see that happen again. I think if it comes to a point where some country or countries start using nuclear weapons, they may very well step in. I think I think the alien beings that people see today are evolved humans from their past, or evolved humans from our future. And I think they have come back to either stop conflict or stop some type of cataclysm from happening that has caused their evolution to change somehow. I truly believe that. I really do. I think that they have the ability to go back in time, either through some type of wormhole or however they do it, time travel per se. But I think that's why people do see them, and I think that they are living among us in some degree. And I think they're here to monitor, and that they know the history, and that they will do everything they can to change history if it turns out to be like that. That's why I'm not really afraid of, this may sound naive, but that's why I'm not really afraid of a nuclear conflict, because I think something like that would be stopped.
That's very interesting. Like you have to wonder. Like I tend to agree with you. Like are they time travelers, like from either the past or the future, maybe?
Yeah.
Because there's been people saying, there's been, I don't know what they're called because I don't know much about aliens, but they're blonde, they look human. I don't know the names, but there's been sightings of them.
Yeah. I
And
think,
so if they look like us, then
I think the human species is a
sorry.
universal. I think the human species is a universal species. In other words, I think that our universe, or our known universe, is inhabited by human-like beings. And I think those people talk about alien beings that are always got a humanoid type form, arms, legs, head, very similar to humans, though it's different. I think those beings are evolved from possibly us, or we evolved from them. But I think that there is, and I think there's some possible evidence to that the human species is a universal species. And as far
I
as
tend to agree.
our evolution on this planet, I think there has been intervention. I think there are skips in the timeline. They used to always talk about, well, the missing link and this and that. Yeah, there very well could have been early man or early humans, but I think there has been intervention that have kind of sped that up. Even with other animals, I think some animals have also been, modified, or there's been some interjection. Yeah, I don't think there's. I do believe in evolution to a degree, but I think there is intelligent design to another degree. I think a good argument that could be made for most.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up, I believe entirely on evolution. But you look into this, you do this for a number of years, you work with people, you document what they see and what they experience, and you eventually start thinking, there's something more to this, and that there has been intervention.
Yeah. Just kind of like the little handshake and everything. Here and there, I believe that. I truly do. Because some of the stuff that happens, you just have to look at and like, it just seems so advanced at times, My other question for you is, when do you think the government, it's the same question I'm sure you get all the time. When do you think the government will do full disclosure?
Not going to happen. Unless it's need to be. I mean, in other words, if they land on the White House lawn or on the mall in Washington, then they may have no choice but to say that there's something going on. They are kind of spoon feeding us with the UFO reports. I mean, these are reports that have been out there for a long time that just was never really part of the public knowledge. People who have been involved with UFO investigations and activity knew of a lot of this stuff. And I think we're being spoon fed. But as far as alien beings, otherworldly beings, evolved humans, I don't think that's going to happen until it would absolutely have to be disclosed. I just don't think it is.
Do you think people would be ready for it, like accept it as a mass population?
Nope. I think there would be one part. I would think there would be one part that would accept it. I think there'd be a greater part that would freak out. And the last thing that any government wants is mass hysteria, because they can't control that. And that's why they're not going to do it.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, look how we as a race handled 2020, like fighting over toilet paper. How would we handle like an alien invasion? I mean, or an alien, not even an invasion, but full disclosure, like some of us would just lose our minds completely.
Well, just look at the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, the
I
pandemic
tend to agree with that. Yeah.
was utter chaos worldwide. Different governments handled it in different ways, but it affected us, and it will affect us for years to come. They probably have a better way of handling it if it happens again, but it was something new, and that's exactly what would happen if we had alien disclosure at some point. I think the closest we're going to get to alien disclosure is by people reporting what they encounter. Experiencers are going to have to give us what reality is actually out there. And, for people to come forward and brave enough to come forward, and for investigators to be brave enough to put it out there, I think that's what you're going to get. That's as far as you're going to get. You can believe it or not believe it.
And I like what you said for experiencers who are brave enough to come forward, because it is a brave thing to come forward. It's brave that you've had this experience, and to like go to somebody like you or like Vincent or anyone else who's a researcher and say, this is my experience, this is what happened, and then hold your breath, like waiting, oh, they're good. And then when they don't say you're crazy, like rush of relief and like you've heard this before, or you understand me,
Mm-hmm.
that was, I think, a good thing that you just said that too, like that. Yeah. And what would you tell somebody who's had an experience and looking to come forward to speak to somebody like you?
Well, I'm pretty open with the people I talk to. I try to calm their fears. I tell them that I will not disclose any personal information. What information they don't want me to disclose, let me know. I'm pretty tight about that. I mean, I tell the investigators who are on our team that that's the way it's going to have to be. Personal information is not disclosed. So you got to put them at ease. And occasionally you'll get somebody who doesn't mind putting it out there. But no, you gotta put them at ease and kind of tap down their fears. But with the internet and more of these paranormal shows and cryptid shows that are on TV now, I think people are much more open to coming forward. I have found that to be the case. So I think for the most part, people are sincere. People say, you got a bunch of crackpots that are coming forward and talking all this nonsense. Well, I haven't found that to be the case. You're going to occasionally get somebody try to pull a wool over your eyes, but that for the most part, that just does not happen. And I've had witnesses I've talked to that just break down when you're talking to them. It happens a lot, and they just want answers, and that's why they come to you. They want answers. It's not necessarily that they want their story out there. Many times I get a report from somebody, they just want answers, and then I have to talk them into letting me write or disclose what they encounter, and reassure them that their names will not be used, their location will be very general. And so it's like pulling teeth sometimes, but people are sincere. And I think that's the big knock on paranormal investigations. I think the public or the general public who are not involved with this just think there are a bunch of nuts out there that just want to try look for fame or looking for recognition, and that in some cases it happens, but for the most part it just does not happen that way.
Yeah, and most of the people, they just want to know, like you said, why them? I myself searched for that for years. Why me? And how you said it's becoming more normal. It, like my mother told me, you don't talk about these things. You don't want to be seen as crazy. You talk about these things. Here and there, she would talk to me about them, but then she'd stop. She'd clam up until towards the end, and then she would talk about it more. But it was just more like, you don't want people to think you're crazy, And I agree with you. I really do. And I hope more experiencers do come forward so others can see that they're not alone. I think that's a big thing, because when you have the experience,
Well, it's human nature not to want to be ridiculed and to want to be believed, and don't want people putting you in a different light that's uncomfortable for you. And that's just human nature. And but I think as time has gone on and there's more disclosure, people have come forward. I get a lot of cases that are very old. I get 70-year-old man who calls me and says, "Oh, I had this happen when I was a teenager." That's I like the old stories. It'd be nicer if it happened, a little closer to the timeline, but you gotta understand where they're coming from. They probably grew up in a very conservative environment, and they just didn't want to come forward.
Yeah, I agree with you because that dogman case that Tommy and I went on, that you sent us on, when we had talked to the witness and I had, said what I saw, what I experienced while Tommy was looking at that track, he got very quiet and then he said, well, my father said he had had a winged humanoid experience, but wasn't even a mile down the road. I believe it was the reservoir or something that's down that way, or the dam that's down that way. And he said that he was stunned. Yeah. Yeah, he was stunned that his father had that experience. So, I mean, it's just like, you don't really talk about it. And he was, like I said, he was very shocked.
Tommy said Wilmore Dam. So, I've had a lot of reports around Wilmore Dam. Yeah. That's in Cambria County.
Yeah.
That whole area has had a lot of weird experiences.
Yeah. And I've only had, when we went there to investigate, it was, there was no bird, there was no bugs. I've only had that happen up here at Flight 93. That's the only place that I've had it happen at. And it was just so disconcerting. It was so weird. And I felt so uncomfortable there. It was something. But when Tommy went back by himself, to double check everything, he said it was totally different. There were birds, there were bugs. It was, it was normal.
Yeah.
So there was something in the area that day, I believe.
Yeah, it changes the environment. It really does. I mean, these things come in there, things change, things quiet. Anybody who's a hunter can recognize that right away. And I know Tommy has had that experience before too. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's why he was like trying out that track we found. He didn't know, and he was complaining about it. I can tell deer tracks, I can tell bear tracks. I didn't know what it was, and that's why I was just standing there when that whatever it was rushed at me, and I screamed because I didn't know what else to do because I wasn't expecting it. I do have one last question for you from David Jones. Have you ever encountered what you a demon?
Well, people who know me know what I'm going to say. Evil is evil. There are a lot of evil out there. The religious connotation of demon, I don't use that word. Malevolent, evil, ill intention. Yeah. There are a lot of energies that cause issues with the living. And when people talk about demons, they're talking about something coming from hell or wherever these things come from. I'm not a very religious person. I do use some of it in my work. I do use the Kabbalah. I do know some Kabbalah. I do use the lesser keys of Solomon in some of my clearings. I do know of it. I do some divination, use crystals in the whole 9 yards if I need to. As far as a demon, I don't buy into that. I mean, evil is evil. There are simply different degrees of evil and malevolencies. If it's really, really bad, and some people say, it's a demon. Okay. You call it what you want to call it. So no, I have dealt with some pretty bad things. The case that I did, which I called the Sioux City entity, that thing was evil. I mean, it wasn't even an earthbound. It was something that was not human. And if you want to call that a demon, then fine. But it was pretty strong. It was feeding off of dead energy, off the dead, as well as the living.
Oh wow!
And that's what they tend.
Do you want to tell us about that before?
Well, I talked about it. Story? I did talk about it in my last personal report, but it's a case I worked on in Sioux City, Iowa. of two sisters who were twins that had contracted or had some type of attachment of some type of evil entity. And I think I think it originated in Arlington, Texas, and when they moved up there, it was attached to them. And as time went on, it was really affecting the family. And in fact, I think their mother actually died from this evil entity. I think it led to her eventual dementia, her eventual death. When she went to the Mayo Clinic, they said that she was suffering post-traumatic PTSD. And I think it was a result of this entity. Well, this thing stuck around. It was feeding off the spirit energy that was around the area as a result of a plane crash. They lived right across the street, across the road, the thoroughfare from the Gateway, Sioux City Gateway Airport, where there was a horrendous plane crash there years ago, and there was a lot of roaming energy, people who were earthbound that didn't even know they were dead, and this thing was feeding off the sisters' energy, the family's energy, as well as the energy of these dead beings, these spirit beings. And I worked with these these ladies for over a decade. And, it took time. And it was hard. The one sister was really experiencing some bad effects. She was contorting. She was speaking in tongues. She was causing PK activity. Her daughter had PK abilities, was an intuitive. She's now grown. She is a very good psychic medium. I worked with her directly. And this is something I do when I go into these places, and a lot of times it has to do with the kids are also affected, and many times the experiencers are also have gifts and abilities, which these ladies did, and their children had it as well. And so that happens a lot, and I do a lot of work with kids. So so eventually it did calm down, and about a year ago we were able to eventually alleviate what was going on there. Well, she had moved to another place, and it followed her there. And I think it's pretty well cleared now.
Well, that's good. That really is. And yeah, I tend to agree with you that it runs in the family. I'm finding that out myself with my son, that it's starting to,
Yeah.
he's
happens.
starting to do things I did with his age. And it's just like, it was some of the things that have been coming out of his mouth lately is just shocking. And we don't talk about this in front of him. Like we don't say any of this, and it's just like, this is just like, God. So I want to thank you so much for coming on. I truly appreciate it. You have been a wonderful guest, and the stories have been amazing. Everyone, where they can find you or contact you and everything else?
Well, you can just go to phantomsandmonsters.com, and my connection is there, my email, my phone number, or you can go to the cryptidhunters.org. Phantoms and Monsters are Fortean research team. We're all listed there. So if you have anything come up, feel free to contact me, or feel free to contact the team.
And what about your upcoming shows? Do you want to talk about those real quick?
I don't have it. Well, my upcoming shows. You mean here on? Yeah. Next Friday.
Here on the channel.
Next Friday next Wednesday I'm probably going to do another personal report show on this channel, and next Friday we're going to be doing an alien abduction roundtable, which should be interesting. So we try to keep it. We try to keep it interesting. So yeah. Yes, and make sure
All
you,
right.
you
Well,
stay on after I do my personal roar. Stay on there for Vincent's show. So I got to get that out there.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to plug that too. He
Yeah.
had a really great first episode with David Eckhart. That was such a great episode. So if you guys didn't get to see that, go back and watch it because it's up on the channel. That was a really great episode with Vincent and David Eckhart. Again, Lon, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And I do want to have you back because I love your stories and everyone else loves your stories. So if you'll come back, I would
Well,
love to have you.
anytime. You know that. I mean, you're part of the team. So anytime you need
So,
something, you just let me know.
all right. Thank you so much. And you have a good night. Thank you
You
again.
too. Bye bye.
Bye. All right. I want to thank everyone again for coming out and staying with us tonight. Again, next Wednesday, Lon's going to have a viewer report show. And then afterwards at 10 p.m. So Lon's going to be on at 9. And then at 10 p.m., Vincent's going to be on. So stick around to watch him. Friday, Lon is going to have his Phantoms and Monsters show. And then I will be on right after 11. I just want to thank you guys again for sticking around, and please like, share, subscribe, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.